What is up, YouTube? And the Wishbinder gift event is currently running in Asia, so if you're on global and were wondering what is in the box, you can see on your screen here that we're actually getting the 3 best bruisers in the game right now. So if you're a turn 2 gamer, or if you're still struggling through some PvE content, there's gonna be very good characters for you. And you might be thinking, PvE content, aren't these characters for PvP? Yes, they're primarily for PvP, but one of them is going to be extremely good in some endgame PvE content, which we'll talk about. If you guys are already in the endgame, you probably already know who I'm referencing, but I'll be talking about, all 3 of these characters, what they do, their lattice investment, and which one you should actually go for. And for sure, I'm going to say if you guys are missing these characters, this box is definitely going for, even if you're missing just one, because they're so good in PvP, and you never know when the meta will completely shift to bruisers, and cleave is like not playable because of an LD SSR bruiser. But I think, all 3 of these are very good. You can't go wrong with any of them. And even if you have all 3 of these characters, they are the characters that use dupes the best in this game because they're extremely powerful. And the reason why they use dupes the best is because bruisers inherently are like very hard to gear because you need to put bulk on them while putting damage. And this crit rate node is extremely good on all of these characters. And the best thing is this last node here, this damage increase and damage reduction. You benefit from both constantly. Cleave units only really benefit from like damage increase, supports only really benefit from damage reduction, but these bruiser DPS that are taking a lot of hits in long fights really benefit from the 5th node. So this is why the dupes are extremely important. Even though I have all 3 characters, you're seeing that I'm like actively trying to max them out. I'm probably going to go for the 100 box anyways and get a dupe because the dupes for these characters are amazing. Now, I want to talk about, which characters you guys should actually go for. So, like I said, all 3 are very good. I would say that Rahu and Holden's lattice investment requirement to be good in PvP are pretty high. Holden needs to be like 554 at least, and the reason why it's 554 is because, even 555 is very good, but you mostly want this crit chance and the extra effects. But yeah, the skill cooldown reduction is very good later on if you can 555 him. Even myself, I can't bring myself to do it because he's very lattice hungry and there's not a lot of lattice in this game. Now for Rahu, Rahu's another lattice hungry character. I think at minimum you want him on 444 because S1, the last node, the defense down doesn't really matter. You just want the stats and the extra damage, to be honest. S2 last node, even though the wrath stacks are very cool, you get a lot just from the passive effects. You don't really need that last node either because you generate so many, and you really want the stats as well. Then S3, you guessed it as well, stats, right? And yeah, just extra damage. You don't really care about the wrath that you gained. If this was cooldown reduction, you'd 100% max it. But like I said, talking about dupes, bruisers are very stat hungry, which makes them also lattice hungry by nature because, latticing your characters will give you a ton of free stats. Now we have Tiamat. So Tiamat is the lowest investment of the 3. The reason why is because you only really need your S3 maxed, and you don't even need it maxed, but you will notice a big power spike in her damage if you do max her skills. So eventually you will max her S1 and her S3 just because you get more damage and you transform quicker with your S1. You're also getting HP from your S3, which gives you even more damage and tankiness against cleave. And your S1 gives you speed, which is very good against cleavers as well, so you can cut. Your S2 doesn't really matter because the stats you get don't really do anything for her. You get defense, you get F-res, and her shield is like not really the most used skill in the game. It's pretty, you don't really use this except for very specific situations, and even then this gets dispelled and the shield isn't going to be that large because she's a turn 2 unit. She'll take some damage at the start, and because of that, her S2 shield, because it consumes her current health, it won't be as big as you'd like. And in turn 2 matchups, you're not going to kill characters anyways on the opener really, so it's not that useful, so you can leave it at level 1. But yeah, like I said, you can use her on lower lattice investment, but she does want to be 515. Now, which character should you actually go for? So this is a very hard question because all 3 are like god tier right now in PvP for bruisers. But I'm going to talk about which situations they're going to end up going for. But I'm going to end up talking about mostly what situations they're really good in. So all 3 of these characters, very good in guild versus guild, very good in arena, offense and defense, and also very good in RTA. So I'm going to talk about what they excel in personally, and then at the end I'll give my suggestion in terms of what I think is best for people getting into PvP, because I think people that are already deep into PvP already have an idea of what they want, right? So yeah, let's start with Holden. Holden's the most flexible of the 3 characters. You can play him in every single archetype or playstyle because He has a Dispel on his S3. He also has this turn meter push and CD increase, which is extremely broken. This also giga nukes characters and one-shots like non-bloodbath characters if they have defense down. And then you have your S1, which hits very hard, puts defense down, and also has this really broken passive that gives him counterattack and final damage. So Holden's like never the wrong pick ever because you can use him everywhere in PvP content. And because he's red, there's not a lot of good red characters in this game. There's actually only one red bruiser, that's Holden. So if you don't have Holden and you're fighting against like a green bruiser, you're pretty screwed a lot of the times. So for that reason, he's a very solid pick. I think he is technically going to be the best one and most flexible. But if you find that you're not really struggling with Holdens, you don't really need to pick him because if you have a way to counter it. But this character is insanely strong, like ridiculously strong. You can first pick him, you can run him on Artisan, you can run him on Jackal Guard, you can run him on Amber. The build is mostly like going to be what you like. And then, yeah, you could just fit him into any team and you can first pick him very safely every single game. That's why he's so strong. You can first pick him, you'll never get counterpicked because there's not really good counterpicks to Holden. Even though people can pick Tiamat, like he does fine because when Tiamat actually hits him and he counterattacks, because he's really tanky and because he has this hard-hitting S1 that can also put defense down, if this defense down lands, you can actually kill the Tiamat very easily. Holden can also control the healers around her with his S2. This is like a full reset. So if you're against a Fushu with no bulwark and you have Holden, you kind of just insta-win. If you're against the Chiaki and you're faster than her, you kind of just insta-win because you can reset her, like perma reset her, right? Because depending on the build you have him on, if he's fast enough, if he's on Jackal Guard, he can actually get his S2 off multiple times on the same target before they take enough turns to reset their cooldowns. So very powerful character, extremely good. I know some people are going to gas him up and say he's good for PvE, but I wouldn't pick him ever for PvE, even though he can be used in like Aurora, and he's pretty good in Terramaton. There's a lot of other options you can use for him for Terramaton, so I wouldn't pull him just for PvE. You have to pull him with the fact that you're going to play him in PvP content on your teams, which you definitely will because he's so strong. So next up we have Rahu. So Rahu is an extremely powerful bruiser as well. He does the most damage out of the three, mostly because he has this follow-up attack on his S2 and his Wrath passive. Basically, he stacks Wrath by taking turns, using his abilities, or if other allies don't use attack skills during their turn, like non-attack skills, like heals, he'll also get Wrath and stuff like that. The Wrath will give you defense, and also, after any ally attacks, you have a 50% chance to use a stack to follow up with your S1. So if you have Lily on your team, and you'll like twin trick your Holden, and then you S1 with Lily, Holden goes first, and then Rahu can go after. So it's a triple attack, potentially, which makes Rahu a very broken unit, if you can't tell. He also has this really hard-hitting S3. It is crazy strong. If you want to know like how strong, it gives you a defense buff, which will make you do more damage with it. And you get Wrath buff, 2 stacks of it, so you do even more damage. And you're going to see it's 400% of his defense. Holden's S2 single target, which nukes, it's 480%, and you don't give yourself defense buff. So this hits like a goddamn freight train, guys. So yeah, really strong character. His S1 does 380%, which is insane, and also has a 60% chance to inflict defense down. And you have to realize he always has defense buff. He's going to have Wrath stacks for even more damage. And you're usually running him on Artisan, which gives you defense as well, which will make him even stronger in terms of damage. So yeah, he hits really, really hard. Now, the only thing with Rahu is that he doesn't really have a built-in counterattack like Holden. Holden's counterattack is built into his passive, so this allows him to run a different matrix setup. He doesn't have to run Bramble, but Rahu's kind of forced to run Bramble, or sometimes Strive if you don't have a Bramble Artisan available. This makes it so that you're losing stats, you're losing that immunity. It makes him a lot weaker into Cleave and Control. In fact, he's pretty much unplayable into Cleave and Control, so you can't really pick him early unless you know the player you're fighting does not play Cleave or Control, and they play like a standard bruiser, and in that case you can pick him. And also about Rahu is like, you probably think, oh, doesn't Holden just hard beat him, so I would just pick Holden. The thing is, if people first pick Holden, you can still play Rahu. People will pick Rahu still into Holden first pick because you can just ban out the Holden and Rahu doesn't really have a counter, unless you're like cleaving or CCing. So if they do pivot into cleave and CC, yeah, you're pretty screwed. But for the most part, a lot of cleave CC players won't first pick Holden unless they have a plan to bait you to pick Rahu, which is like Giga 5-head, right? So yeah, Rahu is like extremely strong. He only is really hard countered by Holden. He's also the best of the three by far for PvE content because you'll be able to use him in very hard stages. For example, if you're struggling with any like floor 43 for like right now, I guess, and also in the future, most likely, you're going to see that Rahu's in a ton of these stages. You can also use Holden, as you'll see, and even Tiamat, but Rahu just makes the runs like 3 times faster. He's also going to be good in some very hard anti-sync echo stages. For example, even Rengokutsu here, he's going to be used, I believe. If we actually look, yeah, Rahu's like in every single team for the first clears. You're also going to see for one of the hardest stages in the blue girl. I don't want to say her name because people make fun of me. But yeah, basically he's also here too because not only does he do damage, but he also, if I can find it, okay, let me go back to his passive. He has like this secret effect. I know I'm talking about him a lot, but I'm like a big fan of this guy. I'm his biggest fan. He also transfers debuffs. So you can transfer boss debuffs that really are annoying, and on that boss, you can do like 50% of her health in like the first phase with this effect. So yeah, really broken in PvE. Late game PvE for very hard content for a lot of the like anti-sync echoes, even Ember Trek and Ethernet Rally, and he's extremely powerful in PvP. The only weakness is he is weak to CC and Cleave, while the other two are going to be able to be used into those two archetypes. So next let's talk about Tiamat. So Tiamat is an extremely powerful bruiser as well. Yeah, surprise, surprise, the 3 best bruisers are all very strong. But she's really good because of her potential against Cleave. So she has this bloodshed effect where she'll basically damage share 25% with her allies. And this makes it so that you just stack her on a ton of health, which is really easy because you have really insane base health. Her base health is 15,000. Other characters like 10,000, right? Even like Holden. Her defense is a bit low, but health is like just so OP in this game that you're going to get so much health from her just by building her on like 2 HP modules. And it makes it so that you can counter Cleave with this character only. So what you can end up doing is people start picking Cleave, you just pick her and ban protect her on 3, and then you pick a ton of healers and supports, and you have a good shot to win. Because the damage share is so broken, and if she does take her turn, you can then just S2 and you have the shield, and if she transforms, your S1 AoE is gonna like one-shot a ton of people. So yeah, very good against Cleave. The only problem is she gets like hard owned by CC. Anything with heal block like Mio and Heinrich really kind of stop her, and then yeah, it's just not a good time against CC, but against Cleave, she's the best answer. And also, she's really good in Bruiser Mirrors, and she has a really hard-hitting S1. This S1, in normal form, hits ridiculously hard. Even in ultimate form, it hits ridiculously hard. So if you pair her with like a Lily, she is just god tier in PvP. So, but in my opinion, the best thing about Tiamat is she's so good on defense teams for Guild Wars and Arena defense. So yeah, just a really solid character. I think she's the best of the 3 for defense, although all 3 are pretty good. So yeah, pretty tough decision if you're missing all 3. If you're missing just 1, it's really easy. If you're missing 2, then you're also in a pretty tough decision. But in my opinion, I would say, wow, this is a hard choice. Now that I'm like actually thinking about it, I think Rahu is just better for newer players because even though he's high lattice investment for PvP, in PvE in the harder stages like anti-sync echoes, you don't need lattice on him, which is nice. And he is going to be like the only one right now that is really good in late game PvE content. But the other 2 are also very good in PvP, so they're worth going for. Yeah, I think overall for PvP, Holden is just the best choice because it fits in every archetype. And the biggest thing for me is that Holden doesn't really have a fire, like a red unit SR character that can fill his spot, right? Rahu has Mizuki, and Tiamat kind of has Viper, which you can build on a bruiser build, right? Like something like this. But Holden doesn't really have a fire DPS yet that can actually take his spot at all. So in terms of priority, I would say it's probably Holden, then like Tiamat, and then Rahu. But like I said, it's very flexible and up to you and what you want. I think Rahu is so good in like the higher end of PvP, like especially like in the higher ranks. But Holden, you're going to see, is just really flexible. You can first pick him a lot, and then Tiamat's just a really good answer to Cleave, which is everywhere. So I would say Holden and Tiamat are definitely higher prio. If you're struggling with Cleave more, you go for Tiamat. If you just really want a really solid first pick for just every playstyle, more so for turn 2, then Holden is a good pick. And then Rahu's like kind of the character where you just want to like kind of shine in those bruiser versus bruiser mirrors, but he's very weak to Cleave and CC. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video.